So if we could, Madam CLA, go with the first item on the agenda.
First item is a communication from the mayor relative to the reappointment of Ms. Andrea Alarcon to the Board of Transportation Commissioners for a term ending June 30th, 2013.
Good afternoon. You have been a great commissioner, so I know you are one of the commissioners that I see frequently out and about and at different hearings, and I really appreciate your participation. And just thought we might give you an opportunity to say, because you've been, is it 2 years now, almost? 2 years. Any issues that you might have or things that you have come up that you think Mr. Rosendahl and I should be aware of as you go through your reappointment?
Well, good afternoon, Commissioners. It's an honor to be before you today. It's been a couple years since I've been before you, so if you'll indulge me, just a brief bit of background. Born and raised in San Fernando Valley, product of public schools, went back east, did my undergraduate and some graduate business work. Came back to LA, served as the executive director of a domestic violence shelter, then worked for Governor Davis, transitioned to Attorney General Bill Lockyer's administration, and now currently serve under Attorney General Jerry Brown. Since I last been before you, I also started law school, and now am entering into my final year of law school. So the past few years have been an interesting growing and learning experience for me. During the past 2 years, the department has made some significant accomplishments that we're definitely proud of, which would include traffic synchronization. We've implemented the new parking meter technology. The Tiger team is moving people along during rush hour. So we're definitely proud of those things, and so I'm excited to continue to do that work.
Great. Wonderful. Mr. Rosendahl, do you have?
Yeah, I mean, you look enthusiastic, which I'm very happy to hear.
Thank you. I actually am feeling kind of under the weather today. So
You're not showing it. You know, the gridlock is only getting worse. And my constituents in the 11th District have north, south, east, west gridlock. It's gridlock all the time, except for a couple of 3 hours in between during the day. Now that you've felt the whole brunt of this whole issue for the last 2 years, what's your sense of where we need to go as a city, a county, and a region?
one of the things that I'd like to explore is the coordination of on-street and off-street parking pricing and market rates so that we can minimize the circling and the congestion and so on and so forth. So that's one of the things that I'm excited about delving into. Definitely want to continue our work with the SPRF. See if we can grow those revenues and income so that we can expand and continue to build. Hollywood and Highland, we brought that up. The revenues are increased as of November. The new operator began their work in November of last year, and since then we've seen an increase, and so now we are actually moving forward with the Hollywood and Vine project, so we're excited about that. So many projects at DOT. Traffic is one of the most important, if not the most important issues from my perspective in the city of Los Angeles, and improving the quality of life, getting people to and from work, increasing gas prices, all issues that we need to face. But we've got a lot of exciting projects to continue to work with.
Let me just ask you in a general sense your feeling about buses. 1.4 million people take buses. It's the underappreciated but yet the most used transportation we have. We talk about subway to the sea. We talk about all kinds of other things. What about the buses now that you've been around a couple of years? Do you think, like, for instance, I'm pushing for a Wilshire bus-only lane. We got federal funding for it. They're in the process of doing an EIR. Both the county MTA and the city have participated in it. What do you see as short-term relief strategies or long-term? Just any kind of sensing that the vision is developing itself around you and the Transportation Committee?
Yeah, I take the buses quite often from Sylmar to downtown during finals. Actually, that's exactly how I survived every day to and from. The Dash service, Commuter Express, is vital service to our citizens, and I think any option to reduce one single passenger commutes is absolutely something that we need to definitely move into. Creating a lesser dependency on vehicles is important. I haven't really thought through specific strategies on how to increase bus ridership, but I'd be happy to work with your office in doing that.
In my district, it's very petty, but it's very real for me, is we have no Dash. and we do have a lot of seniors and a lot of poor people trying to get from one thing to another, but we had limited monies in the budget process for dashes
Right.
this year.
And one of the issues that came before us not too long ago was a monthly fee, a permit for the dash service. And one of the considerations that I offered before the commission was a senior rate, because a senior or a student rate, because there existed none. From what I understand, the department is going to do some initial research and get back to me on the feasibility of that possibility, so that we can help seniors get to and from, and hopefully we can, work with the department to try to bring some dash services to your constituents.
That's about it for me. Well, thank you for stepping back up to the plate. Thank you for your energy and your leadership.
Thank you.
And with that, I think the two of us will approve.
Yeah.
Yay.
Bless you.
Thank you. Bless you.
Thank you. Nice to see you.
See you in the council. When is this scheduled for council?
The date is to be determined, but it may be June 10th.
Okay, great.
Great. If it's okay with you, I'd like to consent items 2 and 3, Mr. Rosendahl, as well. Okay. And you are welcome to sit next to me, because I'm not sure. I
Okay.
feel a little lonely over here.
What's that?
Item 2 and 3 are preferential parking districts.
Yeah, fine.
And 3 is, temporary PPDs. Item number 4.
Item number 4 is the CAO report relative to the 2007-08 Transportation Grant Annual Work Program.
It's the grandkid.
Hello.
Good afternoon. Angela Berman, CAO. Excuse me. The CAO report before you is the annual Transportation Grant Fund report. This report is an annual report that implements the grant-funded projects that are already approved by Mayor and Council in the given fiscal year. This report recommends the transfer of grant funds and budgeted city front and matching funds to the specific projects and departmental work programs. This report also recommends the transfer of budgeted funds for departmental salaries, overtime expenses for the Department of Transportation, Bureau of Engineering, street lighting, and street services. Related costs for all departments are funded by the grants and match funds. In the 07-08 budget, $34.9 million was set aside in front and matching funds for this purpose, and this report recommends that the required funds total $29.3 million. Therefore, the balance of $5.6 million will continue to be available for this purpose in 08-09.
Just a couple of questions, and we have been joined by Mr. Alacone, so I think he would agree with us on item 2 and 3. We did consent, which are PPDs. So. This is, if you could, this is an administrative action that the projects that are here have been adopted in the past. This is really the implementing language. Is that correct? Okay, and part of the budget. And does this normally come at the end of the fiscal year?
Typically, we like to get this out in April, so we are a little late in releasing this report. So next year, we'll try and get it out in April.
And I know that there are several projects that have potential unavoidable costs overruns. I mean, I think in the length of time that the original, some of them are even from 1999, those were that awarded.
Correct.
Do you have, as part of your report, how we're going to find the additional dollars? Is that part of the recommendation?
Yes. Most of the projects listed, there are 36 projects. It's on page 10 of the CAO report, have received supplemental funding through the 2006 MTA call for projects, and other shortfalls will be covered through Prop C.
Okay. I know one of the things we would like to have the CAO come back with is a 5-year forecast on all of the projects that are currently in, and the cost allocations necessary for that. Okay. So I think that will be part of our instructions to you from the report today, to do that. And when is the city going to receive a final decision on the 10 projects and whether or not they're eligible for Prop C funds?
That I'm not sure of. DOT was working on that. I don't know if they are available right now.
Is anyone here that could answer that question?
Oh, yeah.
Looking at you, Rita, I don't know. This is on whether or not the 10 projects that are, whether they're eligible for the Prop C funding.
I can work with the department.
Work with the department to figure that out. Okay, before we go to council.
Right.
Okay, like to know on that one. Okay. colleagues, you have questions on this item?
No.
No questions? Okay. Mr. Alcone, you have any questions on item 10? I mean, excuse me, on item 4?
No, I just wanted to get a clarification. The first project that I looked at in my district is not in my district, and so
I'm sorry.
what boundary lines were you using?
I'm sorry, which page are you referring to? The Department of Transportation put together.
I was actually
chart.
asking my staff to show me the list because I wanted to make sure that we know which projects are going where.
If they might have been done in 1999, 2000, or 2001. It could have been in your district then if it was after 2002, I think, is when they did
So
redistricting.
these projects could date as far
They'd be
back.
dated.
They date back to 1999. If there are any errors, you can let me know and I can get back to you.
Okay, thank you.
Oh, one other recommendation, or I'd like to substitute table number 6 just to correct a typo, and I'll submit that with the clerk.
Okay. But I do think as we go forward, having that 5-year forecast, so we have some idea in our budget projections that we know exactly how we're going to meet the need of those projects. Okay. So on this action, on this item would be to approve the CO recommendations, is that correct?
As amended with the correction that she submitted to the clerk on table 6.
Okay, great. Then that will be the order. I'm sorry, before we do that final adoption, Arnold Sachs, item number 4.
Good afternoon, Arnold Sachs. Thank you. It's actually pretty amazing that you could sit here in all good conscience and talk about transferring funds and discuss these transportation projects and all the intricacies involved with it. Yet when I ask, not necessarily, but not necessarily me, but when MTA or LAC-MTA puts out these projects or puts out these projects, and they use different names for the same project, like I've come before the council, and I've come before the County Board of Supervisors, and I've gone before the MTA and asked for clarification. Please explain why the exposition corridor, named in MTA study as the southern boundary for the Wilshire corridor, or the West Side Extension corridor, has its own corridor. How is it the Mid-City corridor? When you allocate funds to these different project accounts, and I'm sure that it has a project account, yet it's the same project, how can you actually, what does it matter? Just put the money out there and let somebody take it and say that's it. This dog and pony show that we go through for this allocation stuff is getting old. It's just getting so old. You have a Broadway-Figueroa corridor that's going to get money. You have a Coanga corridor that's going to get money. Do they also fall under different project names? You have, and I've talked about this 100 times, you have the Foothill Authority, Construction Authority. You have the Gold Line Construction Authority, authorized by the state legislation to cover a distance that is covered by 2 other construction authorities. County Board of Supervisors says they were voted on. Who voted? Excess money going down the drain. We don't have money for the projects, but we have excess money to allocate for this. Thank you for your time, your answers, and your attention.
Thank you, Mr. Sachs. Some of those questions you can ask the MTA because most of the projects you mentioned are in the MTA.
Ask the
so.
MTA. But they're also
Thank you. And
funded by the youth.
these are projects that have been approved in the past. These are as implementing items. So that being the order, the item will approve item number 4. Next item.
Item number 5 is a DOT report in response to a Perry Garcetti motion relative to the Hail Cab pilot program.
And maybe, I think items, maybe before you all come up, item 6, which is a quick one, relatively quick, maybe we'll go to 6 because we're going to have a longer period of time on 5. I just noticed that was our last item, so
Okay.
item 6.
Item 6 is a Gruel-Labange motion relative to DOT to report on strategies to increase the usage of off-street parking lots.
And who from that? Is that Amir? And this, yeah, you can't get away. this motion is particularly in, again, I have my own experiences in Studio City. I think Sherman Oaks, two of those that are not utilized to the fullest extent, and really trying to look at other ways where a lot of surface lots are being used. Really coming back with a strategy on that, and maybe just hear from you. Because I think my recommendation would be to come back in 45 days on how we maximize the usage of those. So,
And we fully agree with that, Councilmember, and we already have some ideas for Studio City. We've done some marketing and advertising, and we have some creative outside-of-the-box thinking that we'll report back in 45 days. And Martin Bland of Off-Street Facilities also has a program in place for all the other underutilized locations throughout the city, and looking to see in the budget we were awarded some funds for advertising and getting some additional work, being able to get additional resources. So we will come back in 45 days with that report.
okay. Because I think for a variety of reasons, having the full utilization of those parking lots is critical, not only for financial, but to get people to figure out that it is a available resource for them in those areas. So, yes.
And let me jump in at this point, because Venice Beach is a disaster when it comes to the parking issue and how we deal with it. For instance, the corner of Main and Rose, there is a city parking lot, shuts down at night. Then you have all the beach parking lots shut down at night. People have no place to park. And since I've been in office, they've asked me, can we get monthly overnight parking? Can we work out some kind of an arrangement? Because historically, we don't have enough parking for people who live in Venice, be they renters or homeowners. The parking lots sit empty. I'd like you to look at the Venice parking lots as part of this process and come up with some ideas that you think we can do to implement. For instance, why not at night let the people who live adjacent to it have overnight parking, a monthly rate of some sort? I guess it's been one of the biggest irritants I've had from constituents in Venice, more than any other part of my district, that want to know about, they look out the window and they see it empty and they get no place to park. Do we have any sense at this point what the Venice situation's about?
Yes, quickly, Councilmember, I can let you know that the pay stations were installed today. They're being turned on as part of the rollout of the pay station technology that the council had approved. And with that, we have the ability to sell monthly permits. So it's we are under a contractual obligation with the current contractor, however, to have services there, and that contract expires September, where they have the resources right now for the summertime to have it manned. But it doesn't mean that we can't work towards a solution, and we are looking again through the technology to be able to provide the nightly. One issue at that particular location has been the coastal commission, where the night parking constituents have to leave by 7 a.m. in order to have the beach access available for the beachgoers. And that has been a deterrent for the individuals wanting to move their vehicles by 7 o'clock. And I've already worked with staff, and as part of our report back, we have a little section on Venice that we're going to talk about in our report back and see if there's some flexibility on those hours, and if at all possible, if we don't have to go get a coastal permit, that we can change these hours and be able to balance the need of the communities as well as the parking impact for the beach.
That's great. And you put in those new meters at the corner of Main and Rose today?
They were installed today. They were turned on today. There was a little problem with DWP. One of the power to one of the machines wasn't working. One machine is working. We'll have the other one working tomorrow.
And the beach is on the beach. They're county run, but do we own them?
No, that's county.
It's all county?
It's all county.
Okay. And do you know of any other in Venice right now that we should look at in terms of opening up at night?
Why don't we look at our lots, Councilmember, and report back to you along with the other underutilized lots, and look at the hours. And as you know, with the rates being changed, we're looking at that coordinated on and off street pricing, and I think our biggest challenge was to get the on street first and then go back and look at the off street and make the necessary adjustments.
Right. And are we still on target for July for the backside of Electra there on Abbot Kinney?
The Abbot Kinney is, we're working on the design, and we have had some legal issues there that have been delays.
Which was encroachment on city land.
Right. But we've worked through those, and we've made some changes to the designs to have the access to the Slayton properties. We are on a correct timeline, so I have to get back with you on the exact date when we'll be able to implement, but design's almost done. We're working on the motion, and we're moving forward.
Great. And how are we on that smart walk on Abbott Kenny? Is that coming along? Smart walk down Bend there.
I'm not sure what you mean by the smart walk.
It's one of those things where you push the button and then that the yellow thing flashes on the...
Oh, the smart pedestrian. Yeah. We can get a report back and let your office know, Councilmember. Unfortunately, the right people are not in this meeting right now to get that for you.
Good, because Betsy Goldman keeps asking me about that. You know, Betsy is a columnist for the Argonaut who lives in the neighborhood, and we went out there a long time ago to get it done, so I'd like a report back on that. Thank you.
Thank you. So we will approve that item. You don't have any questions, Mr. Alacon, do you? Okay. The report back in 45 days. Okay. All right, now we'll go to item number 5. And we have been joined by Mr. LaBonge.
Tommy, you want your seat back there next to the chair?
I'll sit next to the barrister.
Okay. How are you?
The great barrister. Counselor.
Thank you.
And I think one of the first questions, Amir, I'd like you to talk about is there seems to be some confusion as to whether or not you can hail a cab in the city of Los Angeles. And I want to make it very clear that you are able to hail a cab in the city of Los Angeles. Is that correct?
That is correct. It is not illegal to hail a cab in the city of Los Angeles. What has happened is the perception of a driver pulling over to a zone, a red zone or any other zone where by state law you're not allowed to stop or park, then there is a potential for a violation. And that unfortunately has been confusing and been played out where it's been all along illegal in the city, and it's not true. Myself, I've gone out there and I've raised my hand and I was able to get, a taxi. So there is a lot of change in culture and perception that needs to be hopefully clarified. And what I like to be able to start discussing is a little bit of background on this. The Department of Transportation has been working with a task force mainly made up of Central City in downtown as well as Hollywood in looking at the concept of being taxis circulating our streets just like other major cities in the United States where short fare trips can be achieved through hailing or flagging down. And as we worked almost a year ago, we began the process, and with Hollywood, we came up with the concept of looking at more of stands and areas where the taxis would know where to go and the public would know where to go. And it's more of a contained area of Hollywood, such as Hollywood Boulevard or Sunset Boulevard. And so we were successfully able to add approximately 20 additional stands in Hollywood. Mainly the use in Hollywood has been for nighttime use, so we allowed the meters to be used during daytime for businesses and the customer turnover, and to be able to then convert them to passenger loading zones or taxi stands for the night crowd and the nightclubs and the restaurants. As we worked with the Downtown and Central Business District, or Central City Association, it's a larger area that encompasses downtown, and it was not feasible to go and try to get additional locations throughout. So the concept of a more unrestricted hailing a cab was being proposed for the downtown area. Through the leadership of the Taxi Commission, a subcommittee was formed, and the staff through the subcommittee came up with a pilot program, which is before you as a first step to look at a 6-month initial pilot program where through sets of protocols to our parking enforcement and LAPDs here as well, we are able to use discretion where taxis can pull over, load and unload passengers safely without creating hazard throughout these different areas that we've been talking about. I know Joe Chiswick is here from the Board of Taxi Commissioners, and he can probably discussed a little bit of the role of the commission. What is in your report is also a draft set of protocols where we're working with our traffic officers. They will be able to training and protocols and common sense and using their judgment be able to allow, again, the loading and unloading of passengers in those different areas that's been described in the report. These include bus zones, this includes disabled zones, this includes commercial loading zones, could be metered areas of the city. And as long as, again, they're safely doing it without causing a major safety issue, then enforcement will allow that to happen for a reasonable time. As part of our research, we also looked at other cities, and our taxi commission, we provided some information on San Francisco, and they asked that we look at that program since it's under the same state vehicle code as Los Angeles. So a lot of DOT staff, city attorney, Councilmember Jan Perry's office, and members of the Central City Association, we did go up to San Francisco and looked at their program. Yes. And in San Francisco, what they've done is they formalized a culture that has been there for many years where taxis operate through fares and picking up. They don't have a dispatching system. And in 1997, they formalized that through a memo, internal memo from their Department of Transportation to the enforcement. So no state laws were changed. They were able to do it. They've been doing it successfully. And we came back with our findings to the Board of Taxi Cab Commissioners and provided a set of protocols that we could follow similar to San Francisco. And that was their recommendation, in addition to making sure that LAPD was on board, that we have their concurrence on moving forward with such a program. And Rita Robinson did send a letter to Chief Bratton asking the protocols to be worked with our Department of Parking Enforcement, traffic officers, and to be on board on this program. Two areas of I'd say operational issues are also addressed in this report, and we wanted to also provide that for you as you consider this. One was the issue of double parking, that our traffic officers have a concern with that, and it's also a safety issue.
Will you repeat that?
The issue of double parking, Councilmember, would be in areas, what is proposed here would be areas where you have additional lanes of traffic, that they're not blocking the only lane of traffic. That's an issue for us as safety, as far as enforcement as well. And sometimes that's becomes a LAPD issue as well, because it can also be a moving violation. And the other concern is, as the mayor and council for the past 3 years have concentrated a lot of efforts into anti-gridlock zones and moving traffic and reducing traffic congestions, this may, in some areas that we have implemented those programs, somewhat work against that, because now we're allowing for loading and unloading and vehicles stopping in those lanes that potentially we've posted and have Tiger teams on that are going and trying to remove those vehicles. So what we have really before you is both sides of it, trying to let you know what the operational concerns are. We've provided the tools, I think, how we can do it. And as an initial pilot program, we also have put in some performance measures, because it's important for us to be able to track this and come back and let you know, and you let us know if you want to continue this. And some of the performance measures are going to be, I understand it might be qualitative and subjective, but right now we're going to ask all the drivers post to see how many hailing or flagging they do currently. We're going to implement the program. This is what San Francisco does. They do surveys randomly, how long it takes for a person to hail a cab. Are they satisfied? Are they not satisfied? We're also going to track the number of citations issued, because unfortunately what we don't want to happen is have drivers taking advantage of this program and parking and staying and leaving their vehicles. This is not that program. This is truly a program that's set up for when you are loading and unloading. There's actively, you're with your vehicle, and there's a presence of public getting in and out of the taxis. Also, we would like to work with MTA and get information from their drivers and their buses, our own dash system, to see if they've seen an additional delays caused by a lot of this hailing a cab program. And our goal is to come back within the first 30 to 45 days and provide feedback of all of our findings or performance measures. We would work closely with LAPD to see if there's any accidents that possibly have been caused by this program. We would be measuring. We would work with both Central City and Hollywood Business Improvements to tell us, as they survey their information, where the hot spots are, where the actual demand is, and then to be able to send some engineers out there to measure actual delay and to be able to come back and tell you if that's caused additional congestion or it's not. And I think the other part of this program is the concept of what hailing a cab does, which is provides options for individuals to have another option or choice to leave their cars behind. And both downtown and Hollywood are, a great urban environment right now. We have a lot of mass transit in that area. A lot of the complaints early on from the stakeholders where there was not an option to be able to take short trips. Dash buses do run. Sometimes they're not perhaps running on time, and people want to be able to take short fares, to and from. In addition to the drinking and driving, where we do have a lot of nightclubs and restaurants, that was another component where people did not want to have another option besides getting behind the wheel to be able to take a taxi. So, in essence, right now, that's the component of this pilot program that I have before you. I know I kind of talked fast through it, but I'm happy to answer any questions.
I think if you're going to wait, Mr. LeBon, for a minute, we're going to have I have some questions and have the presentation from LAPD or our DOT officers. Would you like to make any comments?
Yes, good afternoon. I'm representing Operations Central Bureau for Chief Diaz, but I am the commanding officer of Central Area, so I'm greatly affected by the transportation issue downtown. And I've been here for...
Your name for the record?
Jody Wakefield. I'm sorry, I knew I missed something.
Captain Jody Wakefield. Captain Jody Wakefield.
Anyways, for the last 3 years, I've been assigned to Central, and I've watched the revitalization and the continued revitalization of downtown. And I often hear many asking for a better way of transportation downtown. In fact, as of just about an hour ago, I took a business person back to their office from the event we were just at, and she was talking about how she comes from New York and she loves it here in LA, but you can't hail a cab. So although I know that we say it's not illegal, the perception is, and I've heard it oftentimes, that they feel that they can't do that because we're very effective at our traffic enforcement to the point where the taxi drivers are actually obeying the law and they are not violating it. And parking is horrendous down here. And so there isn't much availability and much curbside. So in the short part of this is that we are in favor in trying this pilot program. And also at the education part of this is going to be huge for the taxi drivers, the operators, and our officers and DOT officers when it comes to what are we going to tolerate and what's not responsible part of the taxi operator. The double parking is obviously that's an issue for public safety. If the ingress and egress, we need to make sure we have a lane free. We don't want them to walk away from their taxi and use it as a parking space for all day. But I think it's worth taking the chance at trying this program for the best interest of the community at this point.
And I don't know if you'd like to add anything to that. Okay, a couple questions. One is in San Francisco. Do they still have their anti-gridlock? They call it something differently, but do they allow you to park in red zones, no parking zones? To hail
you were allowed to pick up passengers in those zones. That's correct.
In those zones, and do they allow you to do it in bus zones?
Yes.
Because I know there's some concern about bus zones, particularly from the MTA, and I think we'll hear from them as well, that they would like some further discussion because of concern about a bus is coming down similarly and has a lot of passengers, and suddenly there's a car, a taxi cab parked in that area. What is the pilot period of time that you're looking at?
Based on the council approval, we would, the initial would be 6 months, subject to council approval. Now, the commission and the stakeholders wanted this to be as close as to the summer months, so as early as July, in order to capture the tourism and be able to provide that service as early as July. So this is up to the council to tell us when they would like to move this forward, but it would be originally a 6-month pilot program.
I think you expressed to me that there's only one area of downtown that's considered an anti-gridlock zone. Is that correct?
In downtown, there's a small portion of Olympic. Other than that, we just have the normal AM and PM peak hours throughout downtown.
And the protocols that you would have for both LAPD and DOT, as well as for the taxi cab drivers, how long can they sit there? Because this is not a stand.
Yeah, it truly is, and I think the success of this program has to be a combination of both our protocols and us educating and training our officers as well as the drivers, and that's why one of the measures will be the citation issuance. If they're loading and unloading, then it depends. If a normal situation, maybe 30 seconds. Somebody with disabilities or having additional luggage may take longer. So in Denver, they put 90 seconds, but here I don't think it's appropriate for us during the pilot to actually give a certain time limit. But if they're in their vehicle, council member, and they're parking, the enforcement is going to approach them and ask them to move.
Okay.
If they fail
if they were waiting for a potential client that's coming out of this building, or how do we?
If it's creating a hazardous situation, they'll be asked to move and come back. If they see the person walking out, then obviously that person will be allowed to load and unload safely. So there's going to be a lot of what ifs, but I think the concept has to be public safety is going to be number one, and we don't want to create in any way any kind of hazardous situation.
So on the double parking, are you recommending they can double park? Or, I don't know that many places where they shouldn't be able to find some curb space, to be able to pull in, because there's not a lot of
Well, let's say if
stuff
you're at
better.
Pete's Cafe and it's 7:30 at night, it's after rush hour, and people are parked on Main Street, someone parks in that number 2 lane, is that going to get a ticket? You get out on the corner?
If they're parking there
No, they're getting out of the cab. Number 2 lane,
if
northbound Main Street at 4th.
Currently, the way this is written as part of the protocol would be that if there is additional lanes available, it's not blocking traffic, it's not creating an unsafe situation, then in that situation, they'll be allowed to pick up or drop off a passenger.
Conversely,
And
if they are creating an unsafe situation, they can be cited.
They'll be asked to move. They'll be given warning, council member.
At what point, yeah.
It may be, I can understand LAPD, they have a loudspeaker. You can ask them to move. Traffic has a different situation. They would have to get out and tell them. And in a 2-lane highway, that would be a problem. But I think that if they are creating an unsafe situation, see, I think this is a great program, and I fully support it. And I think DOT did a great job in analyzing a lot of the idiosyncrasies that might occur. But I think in order for it to be effective, it has to be self-policing. The industry itself has to understand that we will not extend the program if they don't do well, or they could be cited if they don't perform well. But it's for their benefit as well as ours. We obviously would hope.
And I think that's why we want it to be very clear. That's why I asked about
That's
the
why
double
the
parking.
education-
Where is if you're a taxi cab driver, because I think you'll find all of us here at this committee support a opportunity, because taxis are
Yeah.
a mode of transportation, and particularly in downtown, if the dash isn't running, or we're trying to encourage that urban feel, that we want to see more taxi cab utilization.
So
The key is the enforcement side of it, and if you get someone who keeps dropping people off, there doesn't seem to be. I'm a taxi cab driver. I could say to you, LAPD, well, it wasn't hazardous from my perspective.
But my point is that they should bear the risk. If it's an unsafe situation, the enforcement official should have the discretion to be able to cite, and but the driver should be aware that that if they're going to double park in a two-lane street, that they bear the risk. If traffic emerges and right in the middle of loading luggage, then they could be cited.
And how is LAPD?
I'm hearing all kinds of different issues that I would be concerned about too, but I think we need to look at how many lanes of traffic we have. We've brought that up. If we have 4 lanes of traffic
On Main.
By Pete's, I wouldn't have an issue with that as long as they're getting in and out. But they are responsible for themselves. And as officers, we have to articulate why we feel it was a danger. So I'm really not too concerned about that, being able to make that judgment call. And I think for the pilot program, my understanding is we would want to give warnings to make them aware, educate them, and then at some point you're going to have to cite them. Of course, in extreme situations where they're totally blocking ingress and egress into a location, we would cite them and move them along immediately. So I think there just needs to be there's some parameters when it comes to, if you have a 2-lane highway, we're not going to tolerate double parking. If you have 4 lanes, that's something different. So it's going to be common sense, good judgment, and we have to use that every day. But it's also, I'm totally supportive of what you're saying, in that they need to be responsible, the taxi operator themselves, and police themselves.
How's the training going to happen with the taxi cab drivers and LAP? I mean, how do you plan on that implementation?
Tom Drischler, our taxi cab administrator, perhaps can talk a little bit about that.
Well, we'll be in close communication with the companies and getting word out to the drivers about the program. Of course, we're going to survey them, and we're going to do that through the airport, because every driver goes to the airport once every 5 days. And they'll have plenty of advance notice that the program is going to be upcoming. I would like to point out that, to put everything in perspective, we have 2,300 cabs in town.
How many?
2,300.
Legal cabs.
Legal cabs. And on any given day, about 460 of them are serving the airport. And then we have several hundred that are out in the valley and several hundred that are south of the 10 freeway. So we're probably looking at 1,300, 1,400 cabs that would be participating in the downtown and Hollywood areas in this program. And you put that in perspective to, say, Manhattan, where there's 13,000 cabs. So we're not really going to be flooding the city with cabs. And in that respect, the pilot program is going to be somewhat modest.
But you have a system whereby, though, that you can educate. I mean, you're going to do protocols, and I just want to make sure it's not the only thing they hear about it, generally other than getting surveyed at the airport and LAPD or DOT giving them a citation, is there's going to be protocols that you give to the taxi cab so they know the rules.
Yes. If there are areas that turn out to be particular trouble spots, that can be communicated to the drivers through their mobile data terminals instantaneously.
And and again, I know the MTA is going to bring up this question, so I want to, why did you still add in the bus stops where those are? I mean, is that as part of it?
Partly because it's hard to, sometimes with the red curb, it's hard to distinguish between if there was a physical bus stop or not, is number one. Number two, especially
but is there a sign? Isn't there a sign that says bus stop?
Sometimes there is, council member, but then the length of the red curb, sometimes we have 80 to 100 foot of red curb, and the buses are only occupying perhaps 60 foot of it. The other reason that we considered was a lot of our dash stops, or a lot of our bus stops, or sometimes the other operators besides MTA, they don't run throughout the evenings. There are certain times that they run. And our, again, experience with San Francisco and working with them, the public's perspective, they don't go in the mid-block sometimes. They feel that it's closer to the intersections where it might be easier because the light might turn red and they have a better chance getting it and also the stopping. So we understand that that's one concern, and that's why we brought it up to you as a measure that we like to measure and get feedback from MTA as well as other bus operators, including our own Dash,
So are you recommending before the final approval that you have a discussion with MTA?
As if this pilot were to be approved by council as a performance measure, one of the matrix, we would get routine reports from MTA from
I'm just
their
saying
bus
about maybe
driver.
having, because from my understanding, they haven't had the dialogue with you all, and maybe so beforehand, whether or not to have that discussion
Definitely.
prior to us actually implementing it, because by that time if we
We're
don't have
happy to
the-
meet with MTA prior to this going to council, and again, just provide all the protocols and everything else that's in the paper or in our report
You
with
have a
that.
map area where this is going to be?
Down.
I do have a draft map, council member. I did not get a chance to finalize it, but I.
Exhibit A, can we get that,
Will you be putting
council
up,
staff, hand it up.
You know, this is a cab stop, you know.
I should just hand it.
How are we going to know where they are? We're just average folks.
Well, that's the whole concept, is you're
Raise
gonna
your
cut
hand.
down.
It's hail.
That's right.
Hail, hail, rock and roll.
No matter where you are downtown, just raise that old hand, it'll come out.
And, and I think it's important to understand that it's a demand and supply. So if the more people are raising their hands, and as Tom mentioned, there isn't enough drivers changing behavior and changing their mindset, then you will get frustrated and you may not choose that option. And vice versa, if there are, cabs that are driving and they all want to take part of this program and there isn't enough demand, then that's the other side of it. So that's why it's going to take at least 30 to 40 days to kind of manage this.
And
But
you're going to look at my Venice Beach and a million tourists and Abercrombie and those areas for this as well, right?
right now, this pilot program, council member, is downtown and Hollywood. And based on what we come back with, as one of the recommendations would be the council could then extend this to other areas based on what information is provided. So the policy decision would be yours.
Because right now, just off the record here, basically, if you're a hotel, you got a bank of cabs waiting there to pick you up, right? So some people go to where the hotel is and flag it down. Or if you're like on Abercrombie, there's a couple of hot bars where people go to at night. There's a couple of cabs always waiting on the side to pick up people. What makes this so different? What are we doing differently with this program than what I experience as it is?
Well, in those areas, council member, because we know of the demand, then we most likely, if we haven't, we can easily put in taxi stands. The department has the ability to do that. It's the size and the revitalization and the it's hopping lifestyle of just so much pedestrians and activity that somebody wants to be able to do that, and that's what downtown is going towards, and there's a lot of development and revitalization that's happening in downtown.
Yeah.
Restaurants opening up, nightclubs opening up, different types of use, both in downtown as well as Hollywood.
And the idea is to have the drivers circulate, too. Drivers are very adaptable and creative, and if they find that they can make some money by doing this, they will make it work.
Yeah,
If-
I was going to say.
Right.
Mr. LeBon.
Yeah, just a couple of questions. Number of tickets LAPD has issued to cabbies in the last year. You're not,
I'm not
Captain
the
Waker,
commanding
you're not
officer,
traffic,
so-
you would know. How about
LA
DOT?
LA DOT has issued approximately 5,000 citation in the past 3 years, council member, 3 years.
5,000 to our taxi cab.
2,300 licensed drivers.
Licensed
So that's-
drivers.
And that's for all kinds of citations.
I got it. And then when they have we try to reach out to them when they go to the airport. That's where you feel you're going to have the best. Do you ever have a rally where you like come to the zoo parking lot, Dodger Stadium? You ever try to Coliseum parking lot just to put everybody together? And
We haven't tried that, but a lot of drivers do come through the permitting. We have.
you see a
have-
number
we
of...
have opportunities.
Because I think
to
they're
get
part of the
information to them.
transportation equation for success if we do it right. I support this. I do think the Hollywood one should include the Miracle Mile area, which has a high density of housing from Park La Brea Farmers Market east to even to the center part of MacArthur Park. It's the highest, most densely populated portions of the city. And I have had complaints from younger people who nightclub, I don't nightclub, who go out and try to take a taxi, and the taxi doesn't want to take a $5 fare. You know, they're going to some club on Beverly Boulevard, and they want to go, and they live on Cloverdale near 3rd Street or somewhere, and they have that kind of challenge. I think you've got to encourage these taxis in some neighborhood form. I don't believe we have, on a scale of 1 to 10, where are we on taxis in your mind? You're the administrator. 10 being like the best taxi service in the world. Remember that?
Nine.
Well,
9? 2? Who said that? Oh, that's, you're a taxi driver. You can't say that, though.
Oh, we have the president of the commission
We do,
here.
and then we want to hear from
That may be a-
Joe, who is
that may
here
be a
as
question.
president
But
of the
anyway, well,
commission.
the question I want to say, what's our value on that? I think taxis are part of the equation. They're not good enough. I have this concept called red car taxis. When I was on the MTA board, and it's good to see Carolyn Flowers, and Art Henry, who is now featured on MTA buses throughout Southern California for the ad. They look good on the, very good.
Boulevard,
When,
Art.
a red car taxi, Madam Chair, would be anywhere, it could be an orange line taxi, anywhere near the terminus of a stop, that there would be a short hop for these taxis to work. I don't think we've utilized them as much as we have. So this is a good step to try to focus about taxis and try to move further on that. I do believe, Madam Chair, you made good points about the MTA and the conflict of intersections and stops there. And I just wanted to hear maybe from the president of the board and the MTA to get their ideas. I support this. I do believe, though, you have the Hollywood. If you're in Hollywood, you live somewhere. So where do you live? You may live in the Wilshire area somewhere, and I think that's most people won't take a taxi, I would imagine. Maybe they would, I don't know. And then also, I think we should get to every bartender on, I messed on that question there, Mr. Rosell. Bartenders knowledgeable on this, and maitre d's to call taxis to be involved in this. Lastly, the other bigger thing is bicycles. There's more bicycles on the street now, and I don't know what the Department of Transportation is doing to where there's more bicycles on sidewalks. All this is a positive, but I do remember when I was in the MTA board, there was a horrible accident of a USC student riding a bicycle on Adams Boulevard at Figueroa, off the sidewalk, into the street, and met her fate on the side of a collision with a bus. This is all real important because all that activity is going on. With that being said, Madam Chair, if we could, it'd be great.
Yes, and I know, yes.
Enforcement?
Well, I had more questions that I wanted answered, so I wanted to make sure we got
Oh, I'm
them
sorry, I
answered.
thought you were finished.
I know that, but I mean, the president of the commission's here, the MTA is here.
Yes,
And I
I
don't
was
know if
going to
we
go
have
to some
any,
public
I
comment
just have one
as well, as part of that.
Hollywood has an interesting history of people hailing people to the side of the road for a variety of reasons. And we haven't.
Representative of Hollywood, I object to that.
We haven't, well, that depends on what your perception is, Mr. LeBlanc. I'm just suggesting that people are hailing people on Hollywood Boulevard all the time. Have we got that problem under control? And if we have, in fact, not got that problem under control, how are we going to enforce against taxi cabs that are pulling off to the side in inappropriate places?
Actually, we had discussed that in the car just earlier about the only reason you put your hand out in LA is not for getting a taxi. So that was a concern.
Yeah,
That being said,
I hope it was in
it was
the
in
context of this
it was in
meeting.
context of the feeling of and the lack of people in downtown raising their hand to get a cab.
Yeah.
Okay, because they all know that they have to go to a hotel where they have the taxi parking and where the taxis are, for the most part. That's where they're going to find a taxi. I don't think blatant, and I believe we're talking about prostitution or narcotic activity. We still have that in different areas of our city. However, it's not often where we're sticking our hand out, and so I'm being facetious with that example, but I can't say that it's under control. We still have those issues, but not at the volume that we used to, especially in Hollywood. When I was a young cop, and there was a huge
You're
problem
still
in
a young
Hollywood.
cop.
Well, I just don't want
But
to
I
stand
can't
up in a
guarantee-
situation where the citizenry out there
I don't
is saying,
think-
hey, you busted the 3 taxi drivers, and then the guy that pulled over for whatever didn't even get stopped.
Well,
Chances are he's pulled over by a Los Angeles police officer
Most
who
likely.
directs him into a motel, and he goes into a motel,
And
and then he
he's-
gets, boom, he just starts crying, and it's the worst scene you ever see.
well, I don't think it's going to be as.
I don't know what boom means, but I know that
Arrested.
I just want to anticipate a problem. I don't want us to deflect our energies away from what I think are more severe crimes than.
Sir, I have to deal with that daily anyways, because I'm always asked, well, how come you didn't, why didn't you cite that pedestrian that walked across the don't walk, but you cited me? It's something we deal with, and it has to be reasonable, and we have to make those judgments and priorities at the time. I don't think it's going to be blatant like that, where we're going to see that every day. Downtown is a pretty low crime area. We still, like I said, we still have narcotic activity, but that's not going to be, I don't think it's going to be the case. I mean, I'm not really concerned about that. And the appearance being that we're picking on the taxi drivers, but we're not getting the bad guys. I don't believe I'll have a problem with articulating why we're enforcing certain things.
Colleagues, if we can, I want to get some of the speakers, and then we'll ask some additional questions. Joe Chiswick, and I know I saw Carolyn run out. Hopefully she'll be back in a minute. And Greg Fisher, through the government-related.
Bow tie today. Well, I got 15 more to try on.
Yeah, that's really nice. Mr. Chiswick.
Good afternoon. Good afternoon, council members. Good afternoon, President Gruhl. My comments are a little bit different than LADOT, even though I feel like I work for LADOT.
Has you been a commissioner for how many, on the taxi cab commission?
I'm sorry?
How many years have you been on the taxi cab commission?
Too many. 9 years, 10 years, almost 10 years. Yeah, since its inception. Yeah.
So you've been through a lot of these issues.
Yeah, we have been, and the mission that we obviously have is very similar to LADOT's Dash and MTA's buses, and one day we'll have subways and the Green Line and all of that. We're trying to move people. It's plain and simple. The taxi cab industry has something to do with moving people. Not only our residents, but people that come in here from other cities, other countries, and spend their good money in our city. And in that vein, the taxi cab, the legitimate taxi cab, pays his dues to the city on a monthly basis, abides by the laws, and in my opinion, has every right to the access to the streets as any other vehicle. The problem is that taxi cabs don't have, particularly in the downtown and Hollywood areas where parking is very difficult and there are many red zones and yellow zones and zones that they can't park in. The taxi cabs are, while as you are correct, you can hail down a taxi cab. The average taxi cab driver spends $1,000 or $2,000 a year out of not very large income in traffic tickets. And so for them to even risk going into a red, blue, green, yellow, they just won't even do it. Unlike Mr. Sadati's experience where he was able to catch a cab not long ago, I walked from the corner of 6th and Flower to figure out right by the Staples Center, and I tried to hail a cab the entire time I was there, and during that entire walk, walking down many streets, and I did so unsuccessfully. And I purposely avoided the hotels and the taxi stands, and there were many an area where a taxi cab could have pulled over, where it was a gray curb or an undefined curb or there were some parking meters there, and yet they didn't.
Were you on the east side or west side of Flower?
I was on both sides, actually.
Okay.
I walked down both sides.
I think it would be interesting to see if they more inclined to go to the right, as opposed to the left on a one-way street.
What we're asking for here is very simply not something that's going to be cast into the Constitution. We're talking about a 6-month trial. Sure. And we're going to learn from the 6-month trial what are the problems. Maybe we'll decide that, you know what, maybe they should only be authorized on one-way streets where you have 3 or 4 lanes. There's plenty of those downtown. Maybe they'll be excluded from certain areas or things like that. The point is let's not. We've got LA City. I'm at the chamber. I should know. LA Live. We've got the Grand Avenue project. We're trying to build up this downtown, and we've got visitors coming here. And when some of them call me and say, "How do I catch a cab?" I say, "Go find a hotel." That's kind of, or Union Station, and that's ridiculous. This is not. Let's have this as a real town. If we have problems, we'll deal with those problems. Or after 6 months, this committee or the council will say thumbs down. But the point is, let's not kill the golden goose before it's even hatched. And that's all we're suggesting at the commission level. Let's give it a try. We'll help the cab drivers. We'll help our citizens. We'll help this city become more cosmopolitan. and we'll do everything we can not to impede the general flow of street traffic, plain and simple. So we encourage you, on behalf of the commission, to pass this trial period at today's meeting.
It might also, it might also improve safety where people find themselves with their car broken down in downtown and stranded for whatever reason. They might be able to hail a taxi and get out of there.
There's 100 reasons, exactly, council member. And I think, and again, let there be no misconception, we're not talking here about a process where someone would call a cab and they would be able to come out and sit outside and wait in a red zone, a blue zone, or a bus zone for their ride to come out. We're not talking about that here. We're talking about this.
Right.
I need a cab. So the person's right there. And they hop into the cab and they go. And when they arrive at their destination, they pay their bill and the cab's gone. And that's what we want to happen. We don't,
Right. Thanks, Joe. Thank you again for your years of support on this. He just gave your speech, didn't he?
It's pretty
Craig?
good.
Yeah.
Greg Fisher, the Office of Councilwoman John Perry, Madam Chair, and council members. I echo the sentiments of Mr. Chizik. It is a 6-month trial period. It will have issues that need to be resolved. I think this is basically how we identify those issues. And I feel very strongly that an additional 6-month period after the first one will be necessary to evaluate what we find out after the first 6-month period, because I feel the first 60 to 90 days are probably a wash anyway, because it'll take a while for this to even begin to take hold. And if we give it a 6-month trial period with an additional 6-month period beyond that to look at this, we probably will get through most of the issues. I want to thank General Manager Robinson and Assistant General Manager Sadati and Mr. Drishler, the Taxi Cab Administrator, for their work, as well as the Taxi Cab Commission, Mr. Chizik, for their work. It's been a long, long road getting here. The last comment I want to make is that we were never a taxi city the way many other cities were. As transportation begins to evolve after the turn of the 20th century, Henry Huntington and the Pacific Electric and yellow car systems basically ran the way most people got around. And when those systems began to be dismantled with Huntington's death in the 20s, we did not pick up the taxi culture that a city like San Francisco has. Instead of that, we picked up the automobile. And this is probably the first time we've actually looked at a new way of working with this weapon on public transportation issues in such a way that we get a new lease on life in at least a couple of limited areas to try it out. Thanks.
Thank you, Greg. Carolyn Flowers, and then we'll go to the other public speakers that are here. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. You are getting your rapid service on San Fernando Road. And you will be getting a hearing on Venice Boulevard in June. Okay, before I start. Okay.
I don't have to take the bus, oh my God.
And as your councilman, what could I do for you?
And you, Mr. Labange, we always work with, okay? Thank you for the opportunity to speak. We appreciate the comments about, reduction in gridlock and the 1.4 million bus riders that could be impacted. Metro is supportive of the programs that provide more transportation options, and in general, we would be supportive of a hail a taxi program that allows for more locations for passengers to hail taxi cabs. However, we do have concerns about utilizing bus zones for this program. We have concerns about the operational impact of bus service. This program could interfere with service performance, resulting in additional congestion and hampering of our ability for on-time performance. We have concerns about safety and the increased liability costs that could happen for accidents between taxis and buses. And we also have concerns about the training and compliance issues. The training is not only on the side of the taxi drivers, it's also on the side of bus operators. Metro is one of 18 operators in Los Angeles, and in downtown Los Angeles, virtually every municipal operator operates in this area. For example, most of downtown LA and Hollywood area bus stops are already at operational capacity during rush hours. Basically, frequency on bus service can be as between 30 seconds and a minute in the downtown area. And if a taxi were to legally stop to pick up a hailing customer and they're doing so in a designated bus zone, it would delay the buses and probably cause inconvenience to passengers, bus passengers, as well as increase the potential for bus accidents. The concern about safety is very high. There's a program. This program could increase the risk of bus accidents in zones and traffic lanes. I was trying to get our statistics on the number of accidents in bus zones, but there are a lot of accidents in the bus zones, and I'll provide that to you later. We have over 18,000 bus stops in the city, in the county, I'm sorry, and 1,000 stops are in downtown and Hollywood alone. I know there was some discussion about the length of the red zone and not knowing, where a taxi could stop. Well, the size of vehicles, differ. There's the dash buses, but there are also 40, 45-footer, and 60-foot buses operating in and out of those zones. And so that's a concern to us about where a taxi would put themselves in that red zone and interfere or cause an accident. We would like to work with city staff to develop solutions that would allow the program's implementation while not negatively impacting Metro service and other municipal operators' service to customers. Thank you.
And had DOT contacted you to sit down and talk about this before?
I just got information yesterday, so that's why we ran over really quickly.
Okay.
I just talked to Rita very quickly before the meeting. We would like to set up some time.
Yeah. Excuse me? Just teasing you about taking a cab over here.
Yeah.
Subway. There you go. And I think that, as I expressed earlier, concern about that, and before this would go to council, I think that MTA and DOT need to sit down and have that conversation, because, and I'm not sure even within downtown or Hollywood where those areas are. If there are peak hours, again, there are probably peak hours that, 5, 6 o'clock at night where those buses are coming every 30 seconds, like look at Spring Street here, for example. I mean, they're coming pretty often.
Even off-peak, part of the restoration of service was to put owl service back in, and so we still have issues with taxis being in the zones and owl, even though the owl frequency is less. But we're restored service. We didn't eliminate service, so we're still going to be operating at the levels that we have, and could possibly be increasing in the future.
So before we go to any other public comments, do you all have a question for Carolyn before we go?
I just want, go ahead, Mr.
I'm sorry. I just wanted to point out that to the taxi drivers who really want to have access to those bus stops, because it is a large amount of available space, that the MTA has their own police force.
No, we don't.
But who polices you now?
We have a contract with Los Angeles County Sheriff's Department, but they're basically on the rail system, not...
So they don't go into the downtown area? Okay.
They're in the downtown area, but basically they're servicing the rail system. We don't have a lot of security or law enforcement deployed on the bus side at all.
And we don't want to do that?
We're basically relying on LAPD.
There you go.
Okay, thank you.
Yes.
You mentioned just real quickly about the rapid bus on Venice Boulevard.
Yes.
What were you saying?
We're going to do a public hearing in June and discuss the options of rapid service on Venice Boulevard.
Great. And when you do that study, you're just going to look at the boulevard, how the boulevard operates, how many buses go on the boulevard, how many cars go on, and that kind of thing to help determine.
Yes, it would be a full-blown analysis.
And then when you do that full-blown public hearing, we don't want 1 million stops, remember?
No. Well, first of all, the parameters of rapid is stops within probably only a mile of each other.
I love it. Great. Don't forget Centinela and Venice Boulevard.
Madam Chair, one question
Yes,
for Ms. Flowers. On the issue, I hope we could find some resolution to try to move this forward. I know you're very concerned, but even if, let's say, you were on Wilshire Boulevard, that the taxi then would be asked to stop on the curb around the corner and off of Wilshire. So the stop would be not on Wilshire. Let's say I want to get off at, but again, La Brea is a peak street, but let me just say Highland. I'd turn the corner and go to the curb there. So we'd encourage the drivers, so the taxi administrator would kind of figure this out. So you're never trying to block the buses, because there is that conflict that's there, especially on some streets that have multiple buses in seconds. So, okay.
Thank you, Carolyn. Thank you very much. I'd like to call the next following speakers: Centenahu Galassi, Hal Bastian, Jeff Mallon, and Arnold Sachs.
Good afternoon. My name is Centenahu Galassi. Thank you for this opportunity. I support the item on the agenda very much. I also thank everybody who participates in this item, and this is really the first time for taxi workers to ease to do their job, to make it simple to do their job. I was listening to some of the administrators that is legal. I had a ticket for dropping a handicapped lady at Wilshire and Normandy about 8-9 years ago. At the convention center, 11th and Figueroa, I got a ticket on red zone for loading a convention person, a visitor. Right here at the city hall, somebody who works for the city, I brought him from 7th and Figueroa. I dropped him here, and about 5 police surrounded me, and they were trying to give me a ticket. Finally, nobody has a ticket on their hand. People were right here. This is not a long time ago. Most of the time, as taxi workers, it doesn't matter whether it's legal or illegal. Yeah. We get tickets. We get ticketed for wearing blue or gray socks, or for wearing different color of shirt. Unless an employee provides you a uniform, I don't think it's legal, but will still punished for it. The problem is enforcement. This enforcement, as a cab driver for 17 years, when I pick up especially elderly person, they cannot carry anything. I have to go pick up, leaving the car. To drop them, at least I have to take their stuff at least to the elevator minimum. If they have stairs, I have to climb the stairs and drop it there. And this thing really makes easy for taxi workers if really passes. I appreciate that. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for being here. Hal?
Good afternoon, Madam Chair and council members. Ms. Smith, it's a pleasure to be here. I'm Hal Bastian. I'm Senior Vice President and Director of Economic Development for the Downtown Center BID. And I'm also here representing Carol Schatz, the President and CEO of both CCA and the BID. Thank you for hearing this issue. This issue began in our office when we were trying to work at ways to create more economic development in downtown. I've had the privilege of being involved in every residential deal here in downtown since the year 2000. We have 12,000 new residents living in downtown that did not live here in the year 2000. We have recruited scores of new bars, nightclubs, restaurants. People talk about downtown as if it's one place. It's not. It's 15 different neighborhoods, 2.5 miles north-south, 2.5 miles east-west. We need these taxis to connect the dots. And here's what it's all about. It's economic development. The taxi drivers will make more money doing natural fares all day long. We'll be able to increase revenue at the restaurants, bars, nightclubs, retailers to create sales tax revenue. This program is so easy, it's hard. And I think we can work through the MTA issues very, very easily. I'd like to point out, too, on the double parking issue, which I hear people are very, very concerned about, we're all for public safety. But listen to this. If you're in the Fashion District on LA Street between 7th and 8th, there are no curb cuts. There are constant parked cars on both sides of the street. In order to hail a cab, you literally have to put your arm out, have the cab stop, but there's still a lane of traffic to pass by, so don't let that get in your way either. We're the second largest city in America, ladies and gentlemen, and we need to stop growing out and start growing up. And growing up includes being able to hail a taxi in downtown, and we really appreciate the opportunity. And I think in 6 months' time, you're all going to be very proud of yourself if you send this to the City Council. Thanks for hearing me.
Thank you.
Very good, well done.
Jeff?
Jeff Mallon, I'm sorry, you'll have to excuse, I lost my voice. I'm hoping you still take me seriously. I'd love to give you my personal rant on frustration in hailing a taxi, but I think what we're really talking about is Los Angeles being a world-class city. You can count the world-class cities on the planet Earth probably on two hands, and Los Angeles always falls as a world-class city. And you never go to a world-class city and hail a cab, and the cabbie says, no problem, I'll pick you up. Just walk 5 blocks down the street you're on, hang a left, and walk another 3 blocks to the designated taxi pickup zone as you walk in the rain and absorb all the water into your luggage and clothes. The I Love LA song comes to a grinding halt. It's just, and that's what we're really trying to do, is we're trying to make Los Angeles a world-class city, being able to hail a cab on any corner. So I'm really just here as a resident who lives, works, and plays in downtown in support of this pilot program. And I think I have to agree with Greg Fisher on extending it another 6 months to evaluate all the issues that you guys are talking about today. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Mr. Sachs, and I'd also, he's getting ready to speak, Nicole Shahinian, Hamid Bahad, and Nadabai.
Yes, good afternoon, Arnold Sachs. 3 things. In this report that was put together by the interdepartmental correspondence, on page 8, down at the bottom, there's a line that I'd like to have looked at. Board amended recommendation number 5 on page 2 to more clearly specify that the Hail a Taxi pilot program is only applicable to legally permitted Los Angeles taxi drivers. I think that should say taxi cabs, not drivers, or it could say cabs and drivers, but not drivers, because if the driver's not working for a company that's licensed and he goes to work for an unlicensed company, he can keep his permit and he's a permitted driver. If the police officer says, well, do you have a permit? Yeah, here's a permit. Law says I'm permitted. But if it's a cab, then it's a cab, and there's a difference between a cab and a driver. So it should say cabs. Then I'd like to point out that just to veer off a little bit, the people said that they went to San Francisco, which is run by a medallion program. Since you're looking at San Francisco's program, are the cabs there unionized? Do they have workers' comp? Because I know that that's been a contentious issue that's come before the Taxi Cab Commission and the Transportation Department Committee. And so I was wondering, if you're looking at San Francisco to initiate this Hail a Cab program, which, I don't know, maybe you can get JPL to come in here and take time off, shut their Mars rover lander off, come in here and discuss all the minutia that's involved. But maybe you can look at that to see about unionizing the drivers and bringing the workers' comp to the City of LA taxi cab drivers, because it is a contentious issue. And Councilman Rosendahl, just so you know, when they consider Van Ness and they put it on Van Ness, then you won't have anything to worry about, because they'll just be going MTA's work like they do with the Mid-Wilshire, Expo Line, and the construction authorities.
Thank you, Mr. Sachs. Nicole.
Good afternoon. Thank you for hearing this issue. My name is Nicole Shahanian. I'm Vice President of Public Policy at the Hollywood Chamber of Commerce. And on behalf of the Hollywood Chamber of Commerce, I'd like to express the Chamber's support for bringing the Hail a Taxi pilot program to the Hollywood and downtown areas of LA. As the downtown and Hollywood areas of Los Angeles continue to grow at unprecedented rates, with increases in residential units, retail establishments, restaurants, entertainment attractions, and other businesses providing goods and services to residents and visitors, the Hail a Taxi program will improve the ability of people to easily find and flag down taxis for short trips in the most congested areas of our city. Due to traffic congestion and the lack of convenient, inexpensive parking, many downtown and Hollywood businesses depend upon a high volume of pedestrian traffic. Mass transit alternatives alone are not sufficient to keep people out of their private cars. There's a growing need for increased on-demand taxi services. The Hail a Taxi program would be beneficial to residents, visitors, businesses, and their employees, as well as taxi operators in Hollywood and downtown. The pilot program has the potential to be a large step forward in transforming Los Angeles into more of a taxi city, as seen in other world-class cities, and will ultimately mean fewer private vehicles being used for local transportation in the already traffic-inundated areas of our city. The Hollywood Chamber of Commerce urges your support of this important initiative.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Hamid.
Good afternoon. My name is Hamid Pedad. I'm from Central City Development Group. We're a development company in downtown trying to develop a 52-story building, and I don't know why I'm involved in taxi cab, but going back to the history of what I used to work, we started this effort to make the Hail a Cab practical in the City of LA when I was in Mayor Hahn's office with the help of Hal Bastian, Greg Fisher, Department of Transportation, Jan Perry's office, and Mayor office at the time, and it continued during the new administration. One comment I like to make is that we did have a direct meeting with MTA. In fact, I have the record of it. We met with Diego Cardoso, Executive Officer, and Robin Blair. They are collectively in support of this program. In fact, Mr. Blair came to the Taxi Cab Commission and testified on record in support of this commission. So I appreciate if MTA can coordinate their effort in this. And in fact, the DOT has been aware of that because in the Taxi Commission, Mr. Blair testified in full support of this program. That being said, I like to present the Council Committee with 33 letters of support from all the stakeholders in the City of Los Angeles downtown, from the business leader as well as the nonprofit organizations. And that's basically what I would like to express, not to mention the support that has been given to the media. As you know, LA Times has written about that. In fact, yesterday, LA Business Journal has the first page about taxi cab program in the City of LA. And Downtown News, of course, has written 3 times about this program. So the stakeholders in the City of LA have been aware of this, so has been the DOT and MTA, and we would like to appreciate Rita Robinson's leadership on this because them and also City Attorney from day first, Shelley, has been on board on this for a long time. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Hamid. Nenabai.
Yeah, Nenabai Ahmed from Independent Taxi. I'm here to support the staff report and for all involved, especially Hal Bastian. For the last 2 years, I never seen anybody with such energy that moved this item into reality. I wish Councilman Tom Labange was here to answer him that in a scale of 1 to 10 where we are, we give DOT a report on monthly basis on what our performance is, and its average is 82%. We serve the public within 15 minutes. So if we are from 1 to 10, we are about 8.2. So that's pretty good, and we reached this through a lot of capital investment and training of the drivers and the willingness of the drivers to work. And they deserve this to pass because it is like a nightmare for the drivers. When somebody hails him, he cannot help it but to stop, but at the same time, he have to think about his pocketbook. For $10 trip to get a $70 ticket was really a nightmare for a long time. And I hope this 6 months period will prevail on the pilot program and expand it to the whole city. Especially, I'm going to give you the best example, is Cedar Sinai. We pick up passengers, we need to drop them at Cedar Sinai. Either it's North Tower or South Tower, both are red curves. If a parking enforcement have a bad day, you drop there, you violate in the rule, and you get a ticket. So we need to make this pilot program. And there was a question about training the drivers. We will write a letter. We have a monthly letter that circulates for the drivers. And we have a bulletin board in the office and all offices of other cab companies. At the same time, we have a big bulletin board at the airport. So we're going to do our best, and it's into the interest of the drivers to make this pilot program work because it is a fantastic job. Let the cabbie be cabbies, please.
Thank you. Thank you. And colleagues, I think the importance and sense that everyone would like to have this pilot go forward with, I think, However, I think MTA and DOT need to sit down and talk before it goes to the full council. In certain areas, I see Rita shaking her head too, because I think it is important in some of those areas where we want to avoid any kind of traffic accidents and so forth to come back before it goes to council to meet with the MTA to have some of those discussions. And if it needs to come back here, we'll do that if we can handle that prior to it going to council. We won't schedule until the MTA has sat down with DOT. Did you want to add something, Carolyn? Do you want to, could you come up? Sorry, just the microphone.
While we were sitting here, I got information on the accidents.
Okay.
I just want to put on the record that 21.6% of our accidents happen in bus zones. And so that is a concern for us for safety. So I wanted to put that on the record.
Okay. And I think, support the hail a taxi cab concept in the policy. I just want to make sure, as the department also is going forward, that we look at how it relates to our anti-gridlock zones and the peak hour restrictions, and then if we start to see, and I don't know how, you have some way in which you're looking at anecdotal and surveys, but also look at ADSAC, different ways in which you can demonstrate whether or not it's had an impact on that as well. And I think that's important to do. So what, if that's okay with my colleagues, that will be amended, that before they have to sit down with MTA, and some of that we'll discuss in the full council as well.
Madam Chair, the committee could approve that, and then the item will not be scheduled until after discussions have been made.
Until we tell you that we're ready to go.
Until you tell us you're ready.
Okay. That's what I wanted to hear. Okay. So we can address some of those issues as we're going forward. Okay. That will be the order today. Thank you. We have one just speaker card, Mr. Arnold Sachs, before that we adjourn.
Yes, thank you. That's quite a discussion. Arnold Sachs, thank you. Quite a discussion. I'm glad you went over that, the minutia. I just wish that your concerns about MTA and the funding were as valid as my concerns as MTA and funding. If I was coming to you and saying, geez, you know, I read, my psychiatrist or my shaman told me this, but I'm getting information from MTA reports. I'm reading MTA reports, and then I'm reading reports from the DOT, and I'm comparing them to each other. And when the MTA puts out all this dialogue regarding the Wilshire Corridor and the parameters for the Wilshire Corridor, and then they turn around, or it's turned around in the county, or the city department, and stated that, whoops, we have an Expo Wilshire, we have an Expo Mid-City Corridor. Yet, the father of the Expo line, who sits on this panel, and the reason I call him the father is because it was originally the Aqua line, way back when. And then there was a hearing when they were going to vote on it to turn it to the Rose line. And that was tabled. So the Expo line was created. And I can tell you that it wasn't the Mid-City Aqua line, and it wasn't the Mid-City Rose line. So how did it become the Mid-City Expo Corridor, Expo line, etc.? You're talking funding. Aren't you concerned about how the funding is spent? I go to the MTA board meetings. I bring this up, not on the agenda. We don't have to discuss it. There's funding for the Expo Construction Authority. There's no funding for the Foothill Construction Authority. There's no funding for the Gold Line Construction Authority. Yet, Mr. Alarcon, or Councilman Alarcon, you were in the state legislature. They passed the ruling. They made the committee. Did they themselves say, well, you know what, we're going to change the color and add 2 more construction authorities? I just don't think so.
I appreciate your comments, and
Thank
we
you.
do
I
have
know my 2
representatives.
minutes is up. Thank you for your time, your answers, and your attention.
Thank you. Meeting is adjourned.
Have a great night.